determine if two vectors point in the same direction. First, let's recall what vectors are. Vectors are quantities that have both magnitude and direction. They can represent various physical quantities like velocity, force, or displacement. When we talk about vectors pointing in the same direction, we're referring to parallel vectors. Two vectors are parallel if one vector is a scalar multiple of the other. If that scalar is positive, they point in the same direction. If it's negative, they point in opposite directions. Now, let's solve a specific example. We're given two vectors, vector v which equals -4 in the x direction and +16 in the y direction, and vector x which equals 1 in the x direction and -4 in the y direction. We want to check if they point in the same direction. The first method to check if two vectors are in the same direction is to determine if one is a positive scalar multiple of the other. For vectors to be parallel, the ratios of their components must be equal. Let's calculate the scalar directly. If vector v equals k times vector x, then k equals -4. We can verify this by substituting. -4 times the components of x gives us the components of v. Specifically, -4 times 1 equals -4, and -4 times -4 equals +16. Now, let's interpret what a negative scalar means. Since k equals -4, which is a negative value, vectors v and x point in opposite directions. Remember, if the scalar is positive, the vectors point in the same direction. If it's negative, they point in opposite directions. Another way to understand this is by looking at the unit vectors. A unit vector has a magnitude of 1 and points in the same direction as the original vector. We can convert any vector to a unit vector by dividing it by its magnitude. When we calculate the unit vectors for v and x, we'll see that they point in exactly opposite directions. To summarize, we've learned that to check if two vectors point in the same direction, we need to determine if one is a positive scalar multiple of the other. In our example, we found that vector v equals -4 times vector x, which means they're parallel but point in opposite directions. This visual representation clearly shows their opposite orientation. Thank you for watching. I hope this helps you understand how to check vector directions.